You're listening to the Dworkin Report, and I'm Scott Dworkin. Today on the show, we have the legendary activist, voice of reason, fighter for our democracy, Jessica Craven. Jessica, how are you doing today?
Hi, Scott. I am great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. We've got a different political tide that's changed in the last month or whatnot. But before we get into that, I'm curious, what got you into politics in the first place?
The same thing that got, I think, many people and especially many women into politics. I've always loved politics, but I have never worked in it until Donald Trump was elected. And then I had a kid at the time, a 5-year-old child who I was determined to protect. And I felt I had to do anything I could to protect my kid. And so I started getting involved in activism. And then I found out I was good at it and started telling friends what I thought maybe they could do too to help. And then here I am.
Yeah, you have a huge following now online and through your videos and chats and your posts as well in Substack. I've seen recently, just to get more specific about what's going on right now, the first person I wanted to bring up with you is your thoughts on JD Vance and his attacks on women, or JD Vance in general. Just wanted to see your take on him.
I have so many thoughts on JD Vance. I try not to think about JD Vance that often. Honestly, I've done some content about him. I did content yesterday about his comment on postmenopausal women, which I thought was really funny and ironic because first of all, I believe postmenopausal is not a correct medical phrase. I don't think that's actually it. Is menopausal women, older women are it's an ironic thing that they are the sort of the strength of the resistance is largely rooted in women and largely rooted in older women. Obviously, women of color have always been the mainstay, but there's a large segment of the women who do this kind of work who are older. So I thought it was very funny that this particular quote came up, sort of dismissing them if they are not engaged in full time childcare, which of course is a great pursuit if that's what you want to be doing. But ironically, many of us are either doing that and doing this, or doing this almost full time, working to defeat him and make sure that there is never, ever, ever a vice president Vance or a president Vance, because that man is sort of toxic masculinity embodied.
Yeah, he seems problematic. I'm not sure if he was the best choice, but Don Jr. was pushing him, and I think Don and Eric Trump would sit there and they chant JD to Donald Trump during dinner and pound on like the table. That kind of putting things together. Obviously, with Project 2025 and what they're trying to hide there, which is basically his agenda, the GOP's game plan. What are your thoughts on Project 2025 and the dangers Trump and the GOP's game plan would bring to the world just overall? I mean, I've seen some scary stuff in there. Me and my wife are traveling between state lines. They can track if she's pregnant, and if she's pregnant on the way back, or like crazy stuff like that, where I'm like, I wouldn't do that. And you read it and it's there. How do you think the world would change if Project 2025 was brought to the world?
Well, first of all, I did a workshop on this yesterday, so I'm glad you asked about it. And I promise anyone watching that we did not discuss this before, but the world would change. This country would change so dramatically in the first 100 days of not just a Trump presidency, but any conservative president is going to inherit that game plan. That is not just for Trump. They love that Trump will do it because he doesn't care. But if something were to happen to Trump tomorrow, JD Vance would do it and would probably execute it even more ruthlessly than Trump. Our country would change in the sense that abortion would be gone. Abortion rights will be gone. And for anyone who is not aware, they don't need Congress to execute the plans that they would execute to get rid of abortion rights, um, birth control, pornography. These are all things that many of them they can get rid of through the Comstock Act, which I'm sure you know, but not everybody else knows, is a bill that's already on the books. It was passed in the 19th century. And the Comstock Act forbids the mailing of any essentially indecent materials, but these are materials that have to do with abortion, pornography, sex, birth control. And of course, it's not enforced now, but should Trump become president, he's going to tell his DOJ exactly what he wants his DOJ to do because that's part of the plan too. And the DOJ will start enforcing this act, and we will lose all access to abortion. I don't think people fully understand just how extreme these people are and how long they have been planning these things and how ready they are to get rid of things that we completely take for granted. Also, things like the Department of Education, the EPA, the National Weather Service. Like they are just, they kind of, when I put it to people in really simple terms, they just don't like government and they want to get rid of all of it. And those of us who don't think about it a lot think, oh, well, maybe small government is good. But when you start to look at how much government impacts your day every single day, do you want to check the weather? Do you want something done about climate change? Do you want your social security payments? Do you want your veterans benefits? Do you want Medicare, Medicaid? Right? We could go on forever. All of that gone. It's very frightening stuff, honestly.
Absolutely. Everything I've seen has been terrifying about that. But we had a change in the ticket for Democrats recently. How have things changed in your world since Kamala Harris rose to the top of the ticket?
I said to somebody on TikTok yesterday that because they were like, it's so happy to see you. I mean, it's so nice to see you looking, I don't know what, so happy. I said, it sort of feels like I finally got to stop swimming upstream while having an anchor tied to my leg. I mean, I have been a huge admirer of President Biden. I have quibbles is maybe too light of a term. I have some disagreements with some of his foreign policy choices, but domestically, I think he's been stellar. Um, I'm a climate activist, so again, I'd love to have seen him do even more on climate, but he's done more than any president in American history by a football field, right? So, and across the board, I think he's incredible. But it was getting really hard to persuade people to be excited about him. Even you could argue whether or not they should, they just weren't. And so, and then all of the calls for him to step down, it just felt like, well, we're going to win this because we have to, but it's really a slog. And now it feels like it's not a slog. And suddenly everything just feels right. It's like one of those moments where you're like, of course, a prosecutor, a woman of color, a woman married to a Jewish man is coming to go against this felon, anti Semite, racist, misogynist crook. It's just, there's something. And also, Harris has been so strong on abortion rights all year, fighting for them so hard. And I think the women in this country and other people with uteruses are just like, thank God we finally have someone who, I love Biden, but he really would not say the word abortion. He just would not, he's tentative around it. It's something he's not super comfortable with as a Catholic, which I totally understand. But in this moment, we need somebody who is willing to say the word, to fight for it, and to just take it to the mat and go all the way. And she is. So it's really exciting.
You think that one issue will lead to some surprises this election? By example, would be Missouri, a former home of, I'm not sure if she's still there, but of Claire McCaskill, Democrat, former senator. You know, do you think that abortion being on the ballot in, like, I think it's also in Arizona and there's some other places, but do you think that's going to be a game changer? Do you think, Trump tried to downplay the other day that it's not really a major issue? It's kind of died down from here. Is that true? And do you
No,
think
of course
there'll
not.
be some
That is
because of it?
that's an absurd. And yeah, abortion is now on the ballot in I believe 8 states and could be, I think, in as many as 11 when all is said and done. And yeah, I do think it'll make a huge difference. I think that after, what is it, 2 years of Roe being overturned, um, we are watching women die. We are watching women lose their fertility. We are watching women being asked to bleed in emergency room bathrooms because they won't be seen. Um, and anyone who thinks that women are like less engaged on this topic is, I don't even know the word to use, is absolutely delusional. Um, Women are apoplectic. We are furious. We are disgusted. And we are also, coincidentally, we are more aware than we have ever been of our power. We have seen what happens when we organize and when we turn out, and we've seen it in every single state where abortion has been on the ballot. And we know now it is in more danger, not less. And so, yes, I think everybody will be surprised. My sights now are set on a landslide victory. And what I keep telling my followers is no state should be considered out of play. I mean, will we flip every state? Of course not. But is Missouri in play? Sure. Why not? I don't think any of us know what is going to happen in November. I think we are in for a lot of very, very big surprises. Mark my words. And by the way, North Carolina is going blue. I'm going to say that now, and y'all can come back and circle back with me if I turn out to be wrong. But I'm telling you that North Carolina is going to flip. That is
I
my prediction.
I'm agreeing with that.
Yes, good.
Robinson is out there. Among other things in the state, I went to NC State and North Carolina State in Raleigh for college, my undergrad, and spent a long time in North Carolina. And just knowing the state well enough, I mean, it really, I think it's time to turn back blue. Um, this is
And have you? I don't want to interrupt you, but have you met Anderson Clayton, the 25-year-old chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party?
she's a phenomenal, and she's been on some
Yeah,
calls we do and things like that. Um, I haven't seen such. Um, it does not reflect quote unquote like young leadership. It reflects leadership, and it's kind
yeah,
of like she happens to be young, and
yep,
but it does not matter. The poise and like the organizational prowess, the energy
yeah,
has
yeah.
changed the party dramatically. So I mean, I'm good friends with Wayne, who was a former, I think he was chair before, but there's just a different kind of energy, and that's the
Yeah,
where I come up with. I'm a big fan of all the work
yeah,
that she's
she's
done and the success, and she's the future of the party there. And I'm guessing that she'll have a national profile eventually, further than she already has um,
yeah, I agree.
in the future. Uh, I what always gets me confused is I see these Republican guys who are members of Congress who I've spoken to when we used to speak to each other before the Trump terms, and they always would say like, "Well, I'm for gay marriage, but I can't do that because of my district. And
Mhm.
I'm not against abortion. It's just like it's a hot button issue. And I'm like, well, what are you even doing here? Like, why would you? These are not like you're not standing for what you actually believe in. So, what are you actually doing here? And do you know like your wife, you're limiting the ability if she's giving birth, like there's things that they may have to do that they cannot do to save her life, the baby's life. Like there may be things that you cannot do to do that, and it may end up in someone dying. And I just don't understand why Republicans don't get that and don't care, and they're that especially with Trump being such a monster. I don't understand. I'll never understand that. Um, so I too, as a person who has sisters, mom, aunts, uh, you know, I don't, and a wife, I don't want any of them to have control over their body. I think that is the most ridiculous crap I've ever heard. No one should control their bodies except for them. And so I just look at it like, would we ever let that happen to us as in men? And no, never, not a chance, not anything, nothing would ever.
Yeah, that's like the question Kamala Harris asked Brett Kavanaugh, right, during the Senate confirmation hearings. Can you think of a single law that controls what men can do with their body? No,
Right? Yeah,
not one.
that was. It was one of because I was wearing a suit while we were protesting. I don't remember why I had a suit on. Everybody else got arrested except for me, and I said, "Why didn't I get arrested?" "Oh, you're wearing a suit. I thought you were here for work." And I'm like, "No, I'm protesting. I don't like that guy."
Oh,
So
God.
there's some people who might not know. Can you explain how chop wood, carry water came about? What it is? Your can you explain to people who may not know about it?
Yeah, totally. So what right after Trump was elected, I got involved with Indivisible, terrific activist movement, really great, who really came out with a guidebook for here is how we make change in government. And like millions of other people, I was just ready. I jumped in and I started calling my representatives and doing all this stuff. And then my husband was like, hey, well, shoot me an email with what you're doing because I want to do it too. And then it was my mom also, and then my sisters. And so I started this little email list of people who wanted to do stuff and they knew I was gathering stuff to do. And so I sent it to them and that grew. It grew into a list that first I sent out through my Gmail address and then I moved over to MailChimp and now I'm on Substack. Um, what I try to do, I used to say it was 5 minutes of resistance assistance each weekday, but it's about still, I try to give people about 5 minutes worth of actions to take usually a call to their representatives, and maybe a letter as well on a different subject. But I also, starting in about 2018, started adding in stuff you could do to win elections because I realized at a certain point, like if you've got a terrible Republican as your representative, you can call them until your face turns blue. They're not going to do the right thing. So, yes, we should use our voice, but we should also work to vote them out. And so, my newsletter will always have a section called Win Races, where there's either a phone bank or a text bank or a postcarding campaign. And right now, I will actually have more than one thing. So today's newsletter had a phone bank and a postcarding campaign and a texting thing. Um, and if there's a cool workshop, like I did a workshop about Project 2025 yesterday, so that'll be in there. I put in sign up links for, interesting webinars that are happening. And then also, I'm a big believer in teaching people how to give their political money strategically instead of just throwing it all at whoever sends you a desperate text message. Most of the time, those are PACs that are keeping 80% of that money for themselves anyway. So, really trying to get people to think about not just giving to the top of the ticket, but down the ticket, giving to state legislative races, giving to grassroots organizations that are the most effective in a state, things like that. So I will give people also strategic places to give. And I've actually put together a document of the places that I think are the most strategic to give your money. So that's what the newsletter is. It does a little bit of everything. And then it also starts out with a short sort of pep talk. Um, I've come to feel almost like a coach where I'm just like, okay, team, here's what's going on today. And for quite a long time now, when everyone has just been in total despair, it's just been a like, okay, come on, guys, we can do this. Like one more day, we're gonna be okay. And that's why the name is Chop Wood Carry Water. Just like, let's just keep doing the actions and trust that we're gonna be okay. And so that's what the newsletter is. It's a real it's a real community, honestly, at this point, of people who are working so hard to save our democracy and save our country and get good people elected. And it's very moving to be a part of it. And it's free. So I encourage anybody to sign up. And
Absolutely.
then on Sunday, I send out a roundup of all the good stuff that happened the week before because also people are so unaware of all the progress that's being made. So I really try to keep people aware of all the great stuff that not just the Biden administration, but people everywhere are doing to move the needle. There's a lot of great stuff happening. We never, ever hear about it in mainstream media. So
It's a lot
that's
more
what it is.
positive than my stuff attached.
Yeah.
Talk
Well,
about
there's a
Donald.
place for all of it.
Yeah, yeah. It's really it's amazing to see the work you do. You touched on it a little bit. In the end of every interview, I always ask for some inspirational words from each guest. So let's set up the example of, let's say someone is super worried about this election coming up, um, and they're helping, they're writing postcards, they're making phone calls, they're texting, they're giving money, they're doing everything they can, knocking doors even, they're, doing everything they can, driving people to polls, volunteering where they can. Um, maybe they have a full-time job and they're doing what they can on the weekends. But they're still worried. They can be around it, they can feel the energy from Kamala Harris. What would you say to them to maybe as some words of inspiration leading up to these last few days here, last few months coming up?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, I think if a person is doing all of that stuff, the truth of the matter is, Scott, they're probably not as anxious as many, many people, because my experience has been that the more I'm in action, the less I'm in anxiety. There is just a correlation, right? I always tell people hope is not so much a feeling as it is an action. When I take action, I feel hope. So that hypothetical person you're talking about probably isn't all that anxious. But what I would remind people is that we have won in every single election where we have set out to win. We have not really lost yet since Trump was elected. In 2017, we flipped a bunch of seats in Virginia. In 2018, we had historic wins and flipped the House by 41 seats. In 2019, we flipped the rest of the Virginia legislature completely. In 2020, we won everywhere. In 2022 and 2023, it's just gotten better. 2023 was bonkers, right? We just won everywhere, just astonishing victories. We know what we're doing. We know how to do this. Americans generally are on board with the policies we're fighting for, and Republicans have only gotten worse and more extreme, more disorganized, and more sort of they're on the losing end of everything. So I would just tell people to trust in our previous experiences, which is that when we organize and work together, we win. And the last thing I will say is a quote I often hear from, I believe, Heather Booth, the sort of talk about a legendary activist. She says all the time, the many are more powerful than the money. And I really remind people of that all the time. Yes, the other side has billionaires who are pouring money into winning. But I want to remind you, they had those billionaires during the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and they failed. They had them during the Ohio ballot, issue 4, issue 1. What was that? God, I can't remember. The abortion ballot measure race, they lost. They had them in 2023 in the midterms and they keep losing. Money can't yet really fully buy elections. It can go a long way, but when we put ourselves together and do the work, we are still more powerful than that money. And I want people to remember how much power they have. When we do the work and we join together, there is nothing more powerful than us. And when people realize that, they start to feel calm, they start to feel empowered, they start to feel stronger. And it is a remarkable thing. And they also start to remember the purpose and point of this democracy. And that is an amazing thing. We have an opportunity to not just win, but to grow into something that is a promise that has never yet been realized. And I want people to hold on to that vision and stick with us until we get there because we can. So, hope that was inspirational enough. That's what I got.
That was a mic drop. That was amazing. Visit Chop Wood, Carry Water. We'll have the link in the website notes, but for those who want to have it right now, chopwood carry water daily actions.substack.com. That's chopwood carry water daily actions.substack.com. But we'll have the link in the post. Jessica Craven, thank you for all you do. Thank you for fighting for our democracy. Thank you for taking time with me today. We really appreciate you. And those words of inspiration were some of the best that I've ever heard on this show. And I appreciate you beyond measure. Thank you so much.
Oh, Scott, thank you for having me. You too are a legend, and I'm extremely grateful and honored to be here. And for everyone listening, thank you for everything that you've done to help save our country. And thank you for everything you're going to do.